Ancient toilets, old record players, and looks that could literally kill you. We're happy to leave some of these what we thought were great discoveries back in the past. Welcome back to Most Amazing Top 10. Here are the top 10 bizarre discoveries lost to time. Kicking off the list at number 10, ancient meetings. Bathroom lighting is key when you go out today. I mean, those 1 a.m. selfies never looked or felt so good. All that neon surely helps. I have some lights here, but not even close. But in ancient Roman times, hanging out in the bathroom was how we did business. Not like we did our literal business in the bathroom. Socializing in these ancient toilets was like socializing at a Starbucks back then. It was normal, and also you would spend hours here. You got shit done. Literally, you got shit done, pun intended. Groups of Romans would discuss politics, business, military strategies. All the while, I'd be in the corner just trying to take a, you know? Romans believed the goddess Glaucina was the guardian of the toilet drain system. Glaucina Maxima translates to big drain. When you invent the flushing toilet, you can call or believe in anything you want. I don't give a shit. Just don't call any meetings there, perhaps. Just leave that room private. I don't know. When I go to the washroom, that's my time. It's called a bowel movement for a reason. It's a movement. It's an event. I need isolation. This is my time. These poor Romans. I mean, thank you for inventing the toilet. That's really great and all and super helpful. But I feel very bad for the first group of individuals that had to use these stone benches. Sorry, toilets, not benches. Excuse me. Also, I guess stalls were invented later. I don't know. Could have thrown out some Bristol board at some point. Maybe? I don't know. I don't want to be shoulder to shoulder with a guy who just accidentally gulped some public spa water hours prior. I'm good. I'm all set. And also, don't even worry about wiping back then, because that came much later. You just got to do the old stone scrape right off and call it a day. There you go. Number 9, daylight motion pictures. We thought we had it. Again, one of those discoveries where we're like, this is it. This is going to change the world. Daylight motion pictures. Daytime movies. Matinees. Lights on. Let's do it. When the lights dim right before a movie starts, I get so excited. I don't just mute my phone also. I throw that thing in the garbage. I'll leave it in the car. I don't care. Movie theaters are also an event. I don't care if we have seats ahead of time also. We're showing up early. I have anxiety. Thanks. Daylight motion pictures were a thing back in the 1910s. It was a movie theater where the lights were all the way up the entire time. It would look like this. I'd be watching a movie like after credit scene, I'd be doing this the whole time. I have a hard enough time watching an after credit scene while people are moving around and jostling about, let alone an entire movie while the room is fully illuminated. This is so stupid. But back then people hated dark auditoriums, and also the world was so dangerous back then, so you wanted to see everything that was coming towards you. And also you wanted to avoid eye fatigue. That's also a thing. This trend moved across the country and a bill was passed, so theaters had to be sufficiently lit enough so you can at least see who's next to you. That's horrible. It's a horrible movement. But I get it. Again, I get it. This is like bizarre. We're leaving these in the past for a reason. Next up was complaints about movie quality, obviously, but at that point, historically, women were starting to also feel safe enough to sit in a dark theater, so we're allowed to dim the lights. So they were allowed to dim the lights afterwards. Thankfully, these didn't stick around. I can't even have a lamp on when I'm having a movie night. It was wild. Can't believe this. Number 8, farmer's gold. Back in 2004, don't worry, it gets ancient, the odds were in these archaeologists' favor. They'd popped into a small shop in Debin, Bulgaria, and wandered in to buy cigarettes initially, but when they left, they were never the same, and they also looked way cooler on the way out. Sometimes you find gold buried at the bottom of the ocean, sometimes you find it in a small shop. There was a local, this young lady who was inside the shop, and she was rocking this gold necklace that caught their attention, so much so that they just had to ask her about it. Hey, can I ask you about your bling real quick? Thanks. The woman gladly explained that her husband had gifted it to her and that he was a farmer who had found that necklace one day plowing the fields. When they got a closer look, they were able to examine that the necklace, turns out the specific necklace came from the Bronze Age, and the excavations that followed uncovered the rest of this lost gold. So from 2004 to 2007, they found 20,000 more artifacts that were uncovered. Gold beads, gold necklaces, gold earrings, hairpins, everything gold and awesome, you name it, they found it. The moral of this story is, zip your lips, keep your secrets to yourself. Next time somebody asks you about your jewelry and you're sitting on a literal gold mine, just tell them it's fake. Tell them your husband buys fake jewelry and that you're so happy. Then they'll just leave and walk away. Number 7, portable record player. Remember when iPods came out and like, it was a big deal? Like, ready? Are you guys ready? 1,000 songs in your pocket. We did it, boom. That was a big deal, but did you know that we almost had portable record players? Oh, that would have been hilarious. So many scratches, would have never worked. They're like, imagine this, ready? 8 songs in your pocket. We did it. Flip it, that's 16. Just saying, B-side, right? How'd you in the first half? This portable record player obviously came from a while ago. We don't see these anymore, nor did we ever for that matter. Back in the 80s, right before cassette players and Walkmans hit the street, this thing had the spotlight for a little bit of time. Thankfully, we have portable record players today and they don't look like this. A bit more classy now. I don't think records are meant to be on your persons with headphones, you know? What are you, Mozart? Just pay for Spotify. Save yourself the back trouble of holding a portable record player all day long. You also had to be completely still. It had to be a very flat surface. So if you wanted to listen to Frankie Valli in the Four Seasons, think again. You'd be like, oh, December, what a night. Yeah, come listen. Just no one move or breathe. Number 6, the hobble skirt. Just from this 1910 headline alone, the hobble skirt sounds like a wonderful time. We don't need to leave this bizarre discovery in the past. We need to bring this one back, if anything. The June 12th headline reads, "The hobble is the latest freak in women's fashions. Skirts that are so tight around the ankle that locomotion is seriously impeded and speed is impossible." Now we have running shoes that like correct your running while you're doing it. We have walking shoes that correct your gait while you're moving. They correct your gait. I use the word gait, that's how you know I'm serious. French designer Paul Poirier made these to free the bust whilst shackling the legs at the same time. Because fashion. Despite how ridiculous and unsafe the hobble skirt looked back then, only the wealthy could afford such a thing. Of course. Middle and lower class women wore skirts with slits or buttons, you know, classic, but they could actually walk around. What a neat trick. They could move with their feet. They could locomotion. I don't know, I'm ranting. These hobble skirts were so popular at this time that the upper class folk sought out a new fashion trend that made them look fancier than the rest. Number 5, arsenic dresses. If looks could kill, here we go. Back in 1861, a poet by the name of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, he got his wife a dress but also caught on fire. Her burns were so bad that she sadly didn't survive. That's how most fires go in old-timey dresses. But these dresses back then, they were flammable as is, but the fact that candles were used everywhere, that surely didn't help the situation at all. You're a walking ball of cotton, and some of these dresses were 6-foot wide cages. You know, these big things back then. Arsenic dresses were a whole new level of deadly. We thought we discovered this new style, this new trend, this new way of doing things, but really it was just a new way of killing people. Even without all the lit candles, this look really could kill you. See, arsenic was used to get that green look, that real arsenic look. It wasn't just in clothing as well. Back in 1861, an artificial flower maker named Matilda Schurer, she used green arsenic laced powder and ended up dying a horrible way. Her fingernails turned green foam came out of her mouth. The 1800s were a wild time, but arsenic is not supposed to be inhaled, let alone wore, so we'll leave this trend in the past. Number 4, bustles. All that junk inside your trunk, what are you going to do with it? That's the question, really. Let's try and figure it out. Bustles were a fun little mix of everything. This is also known as the Grecian bend, not the Grecian snap. That's a different thing. There's the bend and there's a snap. I'll get into that later on. It came to town in the 1870s. Remember how we'd wear cage dresses that extend 6 feet in every direction? Well, they ended up modifying that. That was their new discovery. They're like, oh, we've done it. We've done a new thing. So now it was just your behind that was sticking out and tripping people up. Not everywhere, not in front, just the behind, the big old cage behind. The fabric was draped behind the butt, of course, that was the original style, but some people got smart and began stuffing it. Just wait, it gets better. Now those extended skirts had a little more show to it, you know, a little more junk in that trunk. Yeah, you had an absolute dump truck and some eyes were facing you most of the time. That's the best part. The bustle, looking back on it, pun intended, is ridiculous, but it's not comfortable or practical at all. It began as a small piece of fabric that would hold a dress up, then it became this. You know, people always go crazy, whatever it is. Whenever I see this style, I always think of Aunt Fanny from the movie Robots. That's a really underrated movie. I'm gonna go watch that now. Number 3, animal court. I'm so happy we figured out this was a real thing. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Imagine if Judge Judy did this. Oh my God, buckle up. Do you understand how much money I would pay if this was still a thing today? Okay, animal court. Nobody's losing heads. Nobody's got to wipe the king's butt. Just animals being put on trial for being animals. Finally, we need to bring this back. This is not bizarre. We need to bring this back immediately. Also, I'm not talking about the Salem witch trials, by the way. We talked about that on the channel before. I mean, if animals would break the law, they would have to show up to court and face the music. They would have to hire an animal lawyer. There are reportedly 85 animal trials that took place during the Middle Ages. They're mentioned in this book called Criminal Prosecution and Capital Punishments of Animals by E.P. Evans. Just a wild, wild read. Pigs were more often than not the bad boys of the barn, believe it or not, because they would bite humans. They would like rip body parts off and attack people. So obviously they'd go to court a lot and be found guilty. But then they'd be sentenced to death after. They would do one of the two things at that point. They would burn them at the stake, which that's making food. That's okay, cool. Or they would hang them, which is just So sad. Like, what, can we go home? Like, what are we doing? In high school, I went to the real courts to observe and whatnot. I was taking law or whatever. Imagine going on a field trip and you saw a pig on trial. I'd be like, oh, I'm not doing YouTube ever again. I'm not even looking at that stuff. I'm studying law for the rest of my life. Number 2, the oldest party. Okay, the term boot and rally, that's kind of new. That was added to the Urban Dictionary in 2002, but Romans were way ahead of the game. The more we discover about our past, the more we realize that we haven't changed a bit. That's the fun of the story. We're like, oh, we found something and that sucks, but also maybe it works. The Romans knew how to get down. Well, rather they knew how to get things up. Ancient Romans would often make themselves throw up on purpose in order to continue eating and drinking. What would normally be a red flag at a house party was a sign of respect back then. But it was business. These parties, these long, exhausting banquets, attending these was a sign of social standing. So you wanted to be around the longest, you wanted to drink the most, dance the most, and, weirdly enough, puke the most? Yeah, those are the coolest Romans in town, haven't you heard? I wouldn't last at all. I have a few drinks now, my tummy starts acting up by 11. I'm done. I'm tossing Tums in my mouth at the bar, I'm getting ahead of the game. It was so normal that you would excuse yourself from dinner all politely and then walk across the hall to the vomitorium. Great name also, gets right to the punch. But then you'd go into this room, grab a feather, and then tickle thy throat and make room for even more lobster. Yeah. You'd be like, excuse me, madam. Number 1, and finally number 1, the concho stone. Historic stones from the past, let's do it. This one's quite large and it's below your feet, so it's not too hard to miss if you're near it. The concho stone was initially discovered back in the 1930s in Glasgow, Scotland, one of the most beautiful places I've ever visited. This stone was excavated and turns out it's older than we thought. 5,000 years old. That's really old. Now, given the fact that the Earth is a little older than that, just a few years, the old rocks don't seem to be too groundbreaking per se, but this rock measuring at 43 feet by 26 feet, they have these patterns called cup and ring marks. Now, at first, back in the 30s, researchers thought that these spirals were linked to astronomical phenomena, like how the pyramids were placed after the stars, that type of thing. But archaeologist Kenny Brophy, who has recently taken a crack at the site, pun intended, he's so good, believes it to be ancient artwork. That's art. Pointing to a wall, I'm like, that's art right there. Either way, we love ancient rocks. Not too bizarre, but wanted to end on kind of a more fun one instead of me going, oh.
Starting off this list at our number 10 spot, we have the crystal skulls. The ancient crystal skulls found in Mexico and Central America are a group of pre-Columbian artifacts that are believed to be over 1,000 years old. These skulls are made out of clear or milky quartz and are intricately carved to resemble human skulls. Despite being discovered in the 19th and 20th centuries, their true origin and purpose remains a mystery. According to legend, the crystal skulls were created by the Maya or the Aztecs and are said to possess magical powers that can heal or grant spiritual enlightenment to those who come in contact with them. Some people believe that the crystal skulls are extraterrestrial in origin and that they hold the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Many theories have been put forth over the years about the purpose and significance of the crystal skulls. Some researchers believe that they were used for religious or ceremonial purposes, while others speculate that they may have been used for divination, or even as tools for communication with otherworldly beings. Despite decades of research and study, the true origins and purpose of the crystal skulls remain shrouded in mystery. In our number 9 spot today, we have Linear A. Linear A is an undeciphered script used by the Minoan civilization between 1800 and 1450 BCE. The script was first discovered in 1900 by British archaeologist Arthur Evans and was used to write the Minoan language, which is also still largely unknown. Linear A is composed of over 100 different signs, including pictograms and ideograms, but it is believed to be a syllabic script, meaning that each sign represents a syllable or sound. Despite numerous attempts by researchers to decipher the script, its meaning and purpose remains a mystery. The mystery surrounding Linear A is compounded by the fact that the Minoan civilization itself is shrouded in mystery, with little known about its social structure, economy, or religious practices. The decipherment of Linear A could potentially shed light on these enigmatic aspects of Minoan culture, but for now the script remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of the ancient world. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Tartaria tablets. These are a set of 3 clay tablets discovered in 1961 in Romania, dating back to the Neolithic era around 5300 BCE. The tablets contain a series of symbols that are thought to be the oldest form of writing in Europe. While there is still much debate about the meaning of the symbols and whether they constitute as a true writing system, many researchers believe that they represent represent a form of proto-writing or proto-cuneiform. The tablets have caused controversy in the archaeological community, with some experts questioning their authenticity and others arguing that they represent a significant discovery that could change our understanding of early human communication. Despite their importance, the Tartaria tablets remain largely shrouded in mystery, and their true meaning and purpose may never be fully understood. In our number 7 spot today, we have the stone spheres from Costa Rica. These ancient stone balls found in Costa Rica are a collection of nearly perfect spherical stones ranging in size from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter. These stone balls were created by the Dequise culture between 700 and 1530 CE, and they were discovered in southern Costa Rica in the 1930s. They have since become an archaeological mystery, with many unanswered questions about their origins, purpose, or how they were made. One of the biggest mysteries surrounding the stone balls is how they were created. The spheres are made of granite and other hard stones, and they were perfectly shaped without the use of any modern tools or technology. Some have suggested that they were made using some sort of unknown technique, or that they were created with the help of extraterrestrial technology. Another mystery surrounding the stone balls is their purpose. Some believe that they were used as part of a game, while others argue that they had a more practical use, such as astronomical observations or as a status symbol. However, no definitive answers have ever been found. The stone balls have also raised questions about the Dequise culture itself. Despite their impressive creations, very little is known about the people and their language and written records, which have not survived. This lack of knowledge has made it difficult to fully understand the significance of the stone balls and their role in the culture. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Piri-Reis map. The Piri-Reis map is a world map created by Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri-Reis in 1513. The map is notable for its accurate representation of South America and Antarctica, which were not officially discovered until centuries later. Of course, this means that what has puzzled researchers is the source of his knowledge. One theory is that Piri may have had access to ancient maps that are no longer in existence, such as the Library of Alexandria, which was destroyed in a fire in the 1st century BCE. Others speculate that he may have had contact with extraterrestrial beings who provided him with advanced knowledge of geography and cartography. What makes the Piri-Reis map even more mysterious is the presence of features that are not visible in modern maps. For example, the map includes a land bridge between South America and Antarctica, which has been confirmed by modern satellite imagery. However, this land bridge was only discovered by modern science in the 20th century. Another mystery surrounding the Piri-Reis map is the presence of a series of markings and symbols that appear to depict astronomical and astrological data. Some researchers believe that these symbols may have been used for navigation or even to track the movement of the stars. Despite decades of research and study, the true source of Piri-Reis's knowledge and the purpose of the markings on the map remain a mystery, making it one of the most enigmatic ancient artifacts to this day. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism is an ancient Greek artifact discovered in 1901 by a group of sponge divers off of the coast of the island of Antikythera. The device, which is believed to date back to the 2nd or 1st century BCE, is a very complex mechanism made up of gears and cogs, and it is thought to have been used to predict astronomical events and the cycles of the solar and lunar calendars. What makes this mechanism so mysterious is its advanced technology and the fact that nothing else like it has been discovered from the same time period. The device is believed to have been incredibly sophisticated for its time, and its level of complexity was not achieved again until the development of similar technology during the Renaissance, over 1,000 years later. The mechanism is also mysterious because its purpose and origin are still not fully understood. Despite extensive research and analysis, there is still much that remains unknown about the device, including who built it and how it was used. The Antikythera mechanism remains a fascinating artifact, and it continues to capture the imagination of scientists, historians, and just the general public. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Voynich manuscript. The Voynich manuscript is a very mysterious book that dates back to the 15th century, written in an unknown script and illustrated with strange drawings of plants, animals, and astrological symbols. The manuscript is named after Wilfrid Voynich, a rare book book dealer who acquired the book in 1912. What makes the Voynich manuscript so mysterious is the fact that no one has been able to decipher its contents or identify the language it is written in. The strange drawings and symbols have baffled scholars for centuries, and many theories have been proposed as to its purpose and origin. Some believe that the manuscript is a secret code or cipher, while others speculate that it is a lost alchemaic text or an early form of cryptography. Despite extensive efforts to decipher the manuscript, its secrets remain unsolved, and it continues to be a source of fascination and speculation for scholars and enthusiasts alike. The Voynich manuscript is a testament to the enduring power of mystery and intrigue, and it serves as a reminder of the vastness and complexity of human knowledge and understanding. Maybe this book that we have is holding on to some of the most important secrets that have just been lost to time. In our number 3 spot today, we have the works of old men. The works of old men are structures that were first observed from the air by a British pilot in 1927, and they are located near the Azraq Oasis in Jordan. There are hundreds of these wheel-like structures that are over 80 feet wide, some even as large as 200 feet. These huge structures have been dated back so far that they might just be the oldest man-made creations that we have ever found. While this is all amazing, we have absolutely no idea what they are or why they were created. The theories range from things like sun tracking to ceremonies to some sort of spiritual relevance, but we really just aren't sure. While things like this are incredible finds, and it's amazing that some of the first man-made things still exist on our Earth, it is insane how we have no idea what they are or how to use them, and unfortunately, especially because of the fact that it's been thousands and thousands of years, it's most likely that the mysteries surrounding them are totally lost with the past. In our number 2 spot today, we have the Joppa stones. These stones were found by archaeologists in China. There were hundreds of discs made of stone that were found under a ton of dust inside of a cave. The notable thing about these discs is that they resemble phonography records with a hole in the center that leads into a spiral groove. These stones are at least 10,000 years old, and the groove in them is made up of super small hieroglyphics. Here's the kicker though, these hieroglyphics were deciphered and found to have stories of spaceships crashing into mountains. These spaceships were apparently being flown by what was called Droppa. After this discovery, the researcher who found it was ridiculed as people believed it was ridiculous, but years later some Russian researchers asked for a few of the stones to examine. Upon the Russian examination, they found some sort of extraordinary vibration or hum coming from the stones. After this, research on the stones either stopped or has just been hidden from the public. Finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the Indus Valley Script. This is an ancient writing system that was used by the Indus Valley Civilization, one of the earliest known civilizations in the world. The script is believed to have been in use from sometime around 2600 to 1900 BCE, and it is one of the few ancient scripts that has yet to be deciphered. The Indus Valley script consists of over 400 different symbols, which have been found on seals, pottery, and other artifacts from the civilization. Despite numerous attempts to decipher the script, researchers have been unable to identify the language or meaning behind the symbols. The mysterious nature of the Indus Valley script has led to much speculation about the civilization that created it. Some researchers believe that the symbols may have been used for religious or ritual purposes, while others suggest that they may have been used for trade or administration. Regardless of their purpose, the symbols remain a fascinating mystery of the ancient world, and their true meaning may never be fully understood.
Number 10 are ancient organisms. If you're anything like me, you probably assumed that the Earth's crust was way too hot to allow for any kind of life. Well, as it turns out, that couldn't be further from the truth. A study that came out in 2016 revealed that there are actually tiny little microbes called Hades archaea that have not only been surviving, but thriving in the fiery hot temps. At first glance, they kind of resemble bacteria, but apparently the two groups are about as similar as a human and a tree. The name Hades archaea roughly translates to hellish ancient things, which seems appropriate considering their spicy living habitat. What is especially strange about these tiny microbes is that at the depth of the crust, there's an intense lack of oxygen and light, but scientists are theorizing that they make do with whatever forms of carbon seep down their way. Plus, them being so small helps the whole ordeal, as they require very little energy to replicate or do much of anything at all. Coming in at number Number 9 is an underground ocean. According to a study done back in 2015, scientists believe that below your feet, within the Earth's crust, lies roughly 6 quintillion gallons of water. I didn't even know quintillion was a number to begin with. For reference, that's about 1,000 times more water than all of the Great Lakes combined, or enough to cover all of the planet's land masses in nearly 600 feet of water. Essentially, if you exclude water that is frozen inside glacier caps, about 95% of the planet's fresh water lies in the Earth's crust. I'm sure you're thinking, what great news! This could stop world water issues. Well, before you get too excited, due to intense droughts in California, more and more of this groundwater is being used every year. And once it's gone, we may never get it back. And worse, the depletion of water in certain areas is actually causing the ground to sink over time as it's being used faster than it's renewed. So if something doesn't change, we could be in a bit of trouble. Number 8. A vacation. In 2018, a study gave evidence that the globe may have taken a wee little 100 million year nap during the Paleoproterozoic era. Say that 10 times fast. From what scientists can tell, the Earth stayed relatively dormant, tectonic plates hardly moved, sediment slowed down exponentially, and very few volcanoes were erupting. Again, this is for an entire 100 million years. This was also coming after a time when the Earth's innards were notoriously hot and caused an insane amount of volcanic activity, so for it to just stop for so long and then restart again is very weird, and they haven't really been able to figure out why. But after so much time being dormant, when it finally did get back into the swing of things, volcanoes were blowing up so much that it actually changed the continental crust's composition and caused it to fracture into smaller pieces, eventually resulting in how tectonic movement behaves today. Coming in at number 7, the Mayotte mystery. Back in 2018, strange waves rippled across the planet for nearly 20 minutes. And believe it or not, scientists didn't even notice. That was until a civilian who happened to be watching a live seismograph feed brought it to their attention. The strange waves began November 11th near the island of Mayotte, which is a small island a few miles west of Madagascar, and triggered equipment across several countries in Africa before traveling across the sea and pinging sensors in New Zealand, Chile, Canada, and Hawaii. I mean, that is some serious distance. Apparently, seismologists have never seen anything like it since. According to the size of the waves, a magnitude 5 eruption should have happened that day, but it never did. Even stranger is that apparently earthquakes typically release waves with several frequencies, but the Mayotte waves had only one signal that repeated itself every 17 seconds. Many seismologists have theorized what exactly went down that strange day, but truthfully, much of the mystery about the phenomenon remains unanswered. An alien interference, perhaps? Nah, I'm just kidding. Coming in at number 6, it's melting. I truly wish I was rickrolling you, but unfortunately this is no joke. A group of University of Wyoming professors and students have identified an unusual belt of igneous rocks that stretch about 2,000 miles through the western side of North America. Igneous rocks are what happens when magma or molten rock cool and crystallize, either in a volcano or on the Earth's surface. It's normal to find these rocks along chains of volcanoes, but this one is much farther inland than you would expect, and it contains no evidence of producing volcanoes. Well, nothing is for sure. They believe it could have to do with an event called laramide orogeny, which was essentially the origin of most mountain ranges in Wyoming. And despite a lack of igneous rock there, they have a theory that the tectonic progresses contributed to the melting of the Earth's crust. The other theory is that water infiltrated the deep crust, lowering the melting point of the rocks and increasing the amount of magma. Listen, I know that was a lot of big words, but essentially the crust is melting and it's, well, probably not great. Coming in at number 5, a growth spurt. One thing I did not have on my 2023 bingo card was learning that the Earth's crust can actually grow. Well, at least sort of. Back in 2021, Curtin University researchers set out to test the theory that portions of Earth's ancient crust acted as seeds from which later generations of crust grew. Kind of like a sourdough starter for the planet. At least that's what I'm telling myself. They were able to confirm that theory by using ancient crystals from eroded rocks found in stream sediments in Greenland, which frankly sounds a little witchy, and I mean that as a compliment. Apparently these findings not only advance the understanding of the production of the crust, but have also revealed a 3 billion year old growth spurt that occurred when mantle temperatures reached an all-time peak and the magma from below kind of oozed into the older fragments, and voila! The more you know. Coming in at number 4, a breakaway piece. Okay, so this might not have been found inside the crust of the Earth, but I think that you will agree that this one still counts. A few years ago in 2017, scientists discovered a piece of extremely old crust on the surface of the planet. Now, when I say extremely old, that's no exaggeration. Researchers have estimated it dates back at least 4.3 billion years, which is pretty significant considering the planet itself is estimated to have been around only a smidge longer at 4.5 billion. This particular chunk of rock was discovered enveloped in granite along the eastern shore of the Hudson's Bay in Quebec, an area referred to as the Canadian Shield. It was a pretty crazy discovery considering up until that point the oldest piece of crust uncovered was only 2.7 billion years old, which, while that's still obviously ancient, is no match to the newest discovery. Researchers believe that this is going to help them not only understand the development of our planet, but also understand the development of other planets in the solar system, and I mean, who knows what will be uncovered from that. Coming in at number 3, a giant abyss. Now, there is a lot about the planet that I don't understand, and I'm okay with that, honestly. But finding out that there is a giant hole in the Earth's crust that scientists all know about, that is supposedly fine, kind of broke my brain a little bit. Researchers believe that the hole was caused when a piece of the Earth's crust that measured roughly 60,000 square kilometers was ripped apart roughly 2 million years ago by a 120 kilometer extension along a detachment fault. It's now been coined the Banda Detachment as it sits under the Banda Sea in eastern Indonesia and is roughly 7 kilometers deep, which is pretty creepy to think about the big hole in the planet. Luckily, there are some upsides. Scientists think it will help them understand tsunami risks in the area, so at least there's that. Coming in at number 2 are giant blobs. Okay, so full transparency, these are not found in the Earth's crust. But before you start pointing fingers, they are really strange and no one knows what the heck they are, so it only felt fair to include them on the list. The farthest that humans have ever been able to tunnel down is about 7.6 miles. But thanks to advances in technology, scientists are now able to look even further down with the help of seismological data. In 2016, a team of researchers from Arizona State University used this technology to dive into a decade-long mystery within the Earth. Apparently, there are 2 blob-type masses the size of a large continent, one located below the Pacific Ocean and the other Africa, and no one has ever been able to determine what they are. The blobs are believed to be made of a different composition than the rest of the mantle, but truthfully, they have no real clue what they are made of either. At least not yet. So here's hoping it's something that will soon be explained by science and not some creepy alien life form on Earth. And last up in our number 1 spot is a missing chunk. So not only is the crust kind of melting, not only is there a 7-kilometer void under the sea thanks to a 2 million year old fault line, but there is apparently also a missing chunk. I mean, it just keeps getting better. Apparently deep under the Atlantic Ocean lies what is being described as an open wound on the ocean floor. The wound was puzzling scientists for years because it defies the existing knowledge of how tectonic plates should work. That was until a team of British scientists set sail to try and figure it out for themselves. They came to the conclusion that the erosion was due to the hypothesis of snowball Earth, a theory that explains within those billion years or so there were intervals where up to a third of the Earth's crust was sawn off by roaming glaciers. Those sawn off chunks were then essentially sucked into the mantle by tectonic plates, exposing a chunk of the Earth without a crust. Now, I won't lie to you, this one is hard to wrap my brain around because I mean, a missing chunk of anything never really sounds like a good thing, but I'm just gonna trust the people that are smarter than me on this one and try not to think about how close it sounds to the Stranger Things underworld.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have KV-55. This is a tomb that is referred to by a number rather than a name because we don't actually know who lies inside of this tomb. While this tomb had its modern discovery in 1907, we still haven't quite found the answers surrounding this mystery. To make things a little more eerie, while the walls of the actual tomb are bare, which is bizarre, as you walk down the steps towards the tomb, you'll notice that there are some markings leading up to it. You'll see inscribed on the wall of the entrance the words which can be translated to, quote, "The evil one shall not live again." If this wasn't enough to give an unsettling feeling, the coffin inside of the tomb has been desecrated, with part of the face having been removed. So all in all, we don't know a lot about what's going on down there, but it doesn't seem good. In our number 9 spot today, we have the Ancient Curse. For this one, we have a good old-fashioned curse that was unleashed from the inside of a tomb. Okay, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but there really was a curse found on the inside of this tomb. The tomb of Ankh-Mahor, who was a pharaoh's official who is thought to have lived around 4,000 years ago during Egypt's 6th dynasty, was an above-ground tomb that was shaped like a rectangular box. Inside of the tomb, they found a curse inscribed that warned anyone who dared to disturb it. The curse, roughly translated, states that anything a trespasser, quote, might do against this, my tomb, the same shall be done to your property. It then goes on to warn the trespasser of his knowledge of spells and secret magic, and it threatens to fill impure intruders with a fear of seeing ghosts. These kinds of curses have been found in other tombs, and while they certainly are nothing like the ones depicted in horror movies about mummies, it still might be a little unnerving to those unearthing this discovery. In our number 8 spot today, we have Chapter 17. Archaeologists had a large and very exciting discovery as the 4,200-year-old funerary temple of Queen Nerit, who is the wife of Pharaoh Teti, was found. The recently excavated Saqqara necropolis was stocked full of incredible treasures. Inside there were over 50 wooden sarcophagi, there was a board game, a riverboat with rowers, statues, wooden masks, a shrine dedicated to the god of the dead, Anubis, and there was a burial sanctuary dedicated to the queen. And while all of these finds are truly unbelievable, one of the most fascinating to researchers was a scroll from the Book of the Dead. The 13-foot-long papyrus scroll, which was referred to as Chapter 17 of the Book of the Dead, acts as a chilling guide to the afterlife. In our number 7 spot today, we have Skara Brae. This is an area that is located in Scotland, and it was found in an exceptionally surprising way. In 1850, there was a huge storm that hit Scotland, and it was so bad that around 200 people passed away from it. The next day, however, once the storm had passed, residents of the Orkney Isles began to notice that a part of a cliff had dislodged, but it uncovered a sort of hidden settlement. Tests were able to date this site back from 3,200 BC to 2,200 BC, and it was shown to have been inhabited for about 600 years. There were round stone homes here, and the roofs were made out of whalebone and peat. The design of this little city suggested that there wasn't a hierarchy, but rather a group of people living peacefully as farmers, herdsmen, and traders. While this site is small, the houses are in quite great shape for the amount of time it's been. This little settlement is Europe's most complete Neolithic village, and while it is older than Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids, it's been called the Scottish Pompeii because of how well preserved it is. No one is exactly sure why the residents of this village abandoned it, which is a really unsettling realization made by researchers. Signs point to perhaps a change in climate that might be responsible for the sudden disappearance, but some signs also point to a storm that might have been the reason those living here had to leave in haste, which is deduced by how all of their belongings were just left behind. In our number 6 spot today, we have the scratch marks. When archaeologists opened a tomb they had located dated all the way back to the Qing dynasty, they certainly did not expect to find what was inside. They weren't shocked to find the remains of a person, but what was shocking was the state that she was in. Her skin had turned black like charcoal, and she had a terrifying expression on her face, with her mouth wide open like she had been screaming. To make matters even worse, apparently there were scratch marks that she had left on the inside. Further research showed that it is believed that this woman suffered from a difficult birth, and during labor she fainted. Since childbirth used to be way more dangerous of an activity, it is thought that her family believed she had passed away, and they then buried her, and of course, you know the rest. What a horrifying story for everyone involved, and to see these signs of her trying to escape is simply just awful. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Tomb of the Sunken Skulls. In 2009, archaeologists were excavating the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed in Sweden when they began to find the foundations of some sort of stone structure. Yeah, we're talking about a tomb found at the bottom of a lake. Further research began to unearth the usual things like animal bones, stone tools, and that sort of thing, but they also uncovered skulls belonging to 10 people that are believed to have lived 8,000 years ago. They found another 11th skull buried deep within the mud, and when they uncovered it, they found that fragments of another one of the skulls had been deliberately lodged inside of this 11th skull. Almost all of the skulls were jawless and were mounted on stakes. There are a few theories as to why the skulls were here, and some people believe that this site may have been used for secondary burials, but others believe that this tomb belonged to enemies that were killed in combat, and the skulls were there to send a message. Either way, researchers were rightfully shocked when they unearthed this tomb. In our number 4 spot today, we have the ancient cairn. Alright, this really isn't very terrifying. This is probably the item that made me laugh the most while I was researching for this video, and it comes to us from 1750 BC. This is a clay tablet that features a letter written on it. The letter is written in Akkadian cuneiform, and it was sent to the ancient city-state and was made by a customer named Nani, who was sending it to a merchant named Ia Nasir. Basically, this is the oldest known customer complaint letter. Imagine how much work this took. Like, they couldn't just go online to a 24/7 chat and complain. They had to find a big ass stone tablet, carve out the Logo Sibyllic script, and then somehow get it delivered to the merchant. Like, that's a next level Karen right there. Basically, I guess this merchant guy would travel around selling his copper, and on one particular occasion he agreed to sell some to Nanny. Nanny sent his servant out with some money to pick up this copper, but when he got there it wasn't good enough quality, so he didn't end up buying it. So now Nanny was irritated and wanted to complain about the poor copper quality, and he complained that his servant was also treated rudely during the entire ordeal. He said that at the time of his writing he had not received any copper, but that he had paid the money for it. I don't know about you guys, but I kinda like the drama of ancient Mesopotamia. In our number 3 spot today, we have the ancient tomb art. This tomb comes to us from a long time ago, and it was located in the Shamir Heights in northern Israel. The tomb is large, and it is made up of 400 tons of boulders, and it stretches 60 feet wide. This chamber is said to date back 4,000 years, which is a shocking discovery because that means that humans may have been a part of an organized society in this area all those years ago. There are many paintings that have been found inside of this tomb, which made this the first time art had been documented inside one of these chambers in the Middle East, which is incredible, but we just haven't exactly been able to figure out what they depict yet. Inside of the chamber there were the remains of 3 people. One of the most fascinating parts of this discovery is that there are these lines carved into the ceilings that are all connected to one arc, but we just don't know what it means. In our number 2 spot today, we have Heraklion. Also known as Thonis to the Egyptians, this was an ancient city that was located near the mouth of the Nile River. Greek legend says that this was the city where Hercules took his first steps into Africa, as well as the place where Paris hid Helen before the Trojan War began. This is all to say that, to legend, this city was super important, but aside from legend, no one knew where this place was or how to find it. In 1999, after 5 years of searching, archaeologist Frank Gaudio located the ruins of the city underwater as they had been submerged in the ocean. After finding this location, many things were revealed. The most unsettling of all is the discovery of what happened to the ancient city. As it turns out, just over 2,000 years ago, there was either an earthquake, a tsunami, or a combination of the two that hit the city and submerged it underwater. It used to be believed that Thonis and Heraklion were 2 separate places, and that both were located on what is now Egyptian mainland, but neither of those things turned out to be true. Since then, excavations and explorations of the ancient city have taken place, and it was stocked full of some incredibly cool treasures from thousands of years ago. In 2010, a type of ancient Nile riverboat was found here, and even just recently in August of 2021, it was announced that wicker baskets that contained fruits of the duum palm tree as well as grape seeds that date back to the early 4th century BC had been found among the ruins. In our number 1 spot today we have the droughts. Ancient drawings and writings were found covering the walls of the Dayu cave, which is located in central China, and a lot of them detail different droughts and such that were experienced during the time of their writing. According to these drawings, people would come to the cave for either water or to pray for rain in the times of drought. The writings reveal some of the horrors that the people of the time experienced while going through these periods of drought, including severe starvation, social instability, and conflict between government and citizens. While these cave writings show us a difficult time in history, researchers say that the stalagmites that were also found in the cave may show a grim prediction for the future. Since stalagmites are formed by dripping water and they form rings, sort of like how trees do, these rings can give us insights into different things. Based on the patterns of these rings, scientists were able to corroborate the things that the cave writings were saying, but they were also able to make a grim prediction for the future, which is that unfortunately the region may again see one of these catastrophic droughts, this time in the late 2030s.
Starting us off with number 10 is the claw. So back in 1986, an expedition was undertaken on Mountain Owen in New Zealand since there was a network of unexplored caves under the mountain. Yes, because exploring caves with little to no light always ends well for everyone involved. Thankfully, nothing horror movie-esque happened other than them finding a few bones here and there and then a gigantic claw. And honest to God, when I saw the picture of it, I was like, what the hell was living in that cave? And I hope to God it didn't have kids. Forget kids, what if its hungry cousins were nearby? Like, you're still done for either way. And I'm not even talking like a small bear claw, I'm talking 4 massive claws that were most likely attached to a dinosaur ready to steal your kids and your wife. Hide your kids, hide your wife. Now, it definitely wasn't Jurassic Park 2.0, but the team managed to find 3,000-year-old remains of an upland moa, which was basically a flightless bird. Flightless or not, it could still probably tear you apart on foot. Coming in at number 9 is the caveman, and before you skip this one because you think it's just one of those basic old cavemen that we keep finding, it's not. Just putting that disclaimer out there. One day, a speleologist, someone who studies caves by the way, was looking through the Lama Lunga cave network in Italy when he found the Altamura man. And I kid you not, if you have trypophobia, I really recommend not looking at this one or its pictures because it's really just very cringy. I get goosebumps just thinking about it and looking at it, and I don't want to. The skeleton of this man was covered with white bumps, as was the cave. It's like the man and the cave just became one. And I honestly don't know where one started and the other ended. What really happened was that a Neanderthal from way back when must have fallen into the cave and died of starvation. Eons later, a layer of calcium carbonate built over his remains, thus preserving them but also making you want to vomit. Basically, the cave ate him and is still eating him. After scraping off a bit of his shoulder, researchers concluded that Altamura man is the oldest Neanderthal ever found. Fact of the day. At number 8 we have cannibalism. We need backstory for this one because how did they just magically dig up cannibalism? They didn't. Relax. Back in 1845, the Franklin expedition was a British voyage of Arctic exploration which went promisingly underway but ended up in disaster. On the way, the HMS Erebus and HMS Terror got stuck in the ice and were trapped a lot longer than expected due to very cold summers. By 1848, the 129 men aboard the ships decided to leave and do a 1,000-mile trek to the closest trading port, which was Hudson Bay. On the way there, researchers were sure the men suffered from many things like scurvy, hypothermia, lead poisoning, etc. that could have been what caused them to leave their ships, which were essentially their only food source. Like, they packed enough food to last them 5 to 7 years, yet they still left. Something doesn't add up. None of the men survived, and even the Inuit of the area stayed away from that region because food was so scarce. After recovering around 35 bones from the area, anthropologists noticed the bones had been broken and many had cut marks indicating someone had cut the flesh from the bones, so cannibalism definitely had occurred amongst the crew. But the bones also exposed something a lot more gruesome. They also showed signs of pot polishing, which means the ends of the bones were heated in a boiling cooking pot. And that only ever happens in the last stage of cannibalism, when someone extracts the marrow from a bone to get any nutrition they possibly can. This all goes hand in hand with what Inuit eyewitnesses said they saw, which were piles and piles of fractured human bones. Filling our number 7 slot is the sewer. So I didn't know excavation could be done in sewers, but apparently it can, so a group was doing just that under a Byzantine bathhouse in Israel. After a while of finding nothing, they started coming across hundreds of thousands of little bones. and after finding nearly 100 bodies, they realized they were waist deep into a sewer that was specifically for getting rid of newborn babies. Despite doing a lot of research, no one knows the real reason all the bones are down there. Initially, researchers thought it was just for female infants, since at the time the parents of these kids would have seen girls as less valuable. Thank God we grew out of that, guys, but either way, some of the bones also belonged to male babies, so it wasn't that either. And that's how far their research went. I wish I could tell you more. So in conclusion, we found 100 baby corpses in a sewer, and we're just apparently gonna just sweep it under the rug and move on. Now at number 6 are the headless Vikings. So along a road in Dorset, archaeologists were doing some digging when they came across the remains of 54 Viking mercenaries. But the scary part was that all the corpses were headless. The group went on to record the positioning of the bones when they realized everything was conveniently in its own pile. The heads were all together, the legs and arms were arranged, as were the torsos. Initial theories were that the Vikings tried to occupy a village nearby, failed, and then the villagers came and murdered them and took some of the skulls as souvenirs. Honestly, I highly doubt this, because aren't Vikings meant to be pretty jacked and very good at fighting? I feel like they would have beat the villagers. Another more viable theory was that the Vikings may have been sacrificed in a ritual, which explains the bone arrangements but has no link with the culture around the area, so you win some, you lose some. Coming in at number 5 is the Screaming Mummy. So back in 1886, Gaston Maspero, the head of the Egyptian Antiquities Service, was bringing mummies out of their sarcophagi. Side note, I love when the plural of something ends in I, it's just very amusing to me. Anyway, he came across one sarcophagus that was quite plain. The ones of queens and kings usually say very clearly who's buried inside, but this one was just a bit of a mystery. Inside, it was wrapped in sheepskin, which was seen as low class and unclean in ancient Egypt. Either way, when Gaston finally uncovered it, the corpse's hands and feet were bound together, and the person also died screaming, or so it seemed. It looked like the person had been tortured mid-death, or was buried alive, or maybe even poisoned. As sadistic as that sounds, after a lot more research into mummification, they realized that unless the jaw is strapped shut when the body is mummified, then the jaw just naturally falls open anyway. So in that regard, I guess all mummies are screaming mummies, but this person, known as Unknown Man E, was the first. At number 4 is the pit. So back in 2012, archaeologists were surveying an area in Bergheim, France, when they found around 5 acres of pits called silos absolutely filled to the brim with human bones. They uncovered 60 silos, 14 of which were filled with bones, because that's totally normal in this day and age. One of the silos just had dismembered human bones, which shows a hell of a lot of amputation took place to fill it up. Other bodies were found which had suffered trauma blows and stabbings as well. Why are we uncovering so many pits or tombs filled with suspicious dead bodies? Like, how did people not have to report this stuff or write it up back then? Like, I'm very confused. Either way, bodies of adults, children, and even infants were found and were estimated to be around 5,000 years old. Filling our number 3 slot is chemical warfare. So back in 1933, an archaeologist by the name of Robert Dumesnil was doing a dig near Dura Europa, which is where the Persians seized the Romans. This whole video is a history lesson, I love it. During the dig, he went through several tunnels and he happened upon the bodies of 19 Roman soldiers. All the bodies were positioned as if they died running away from someone or something, and at the end of the tunnel was a single Persian soldier found literally clutching his chest in his armor. After an investigation and then a re-investigation of the original dig, another archaeologist found that all 20 men died due to one of the earliest attempts at chemical warfare. The Roman tunnel was above the Persian one, so they planned to break into them from above, but obviously the Persians could hear everything they were doing. So the Persians came up with a plan to light a fire in the tunnel and throw bitumen and sulfur on the flames, which caused all of them to die. As they breathed the choking gas inside, it turned into sulfuric acid in their lungs, leaving them all dying a slow and painful death. Now at number 2 are the Polish vampires. In 2016, a group of archaeologists were doing a dig in a cemetery located in West Poland. They uncovered graves dating back to the 13th and 14th century, but it was the way the bodies were buried that caught their attention. All the corpses were either mutilated, decapitated, punctured in the spine or sacrum, pinned down from the neck, or bound. All these methods were believed to physically stop the dead from rising again, so researchers believe the locals assumed these people were vampires. One woman who died was believed to have kyphosis, a condition that gave her a hunch which could have led people to believe she was a vampire. She was buried face down and her knees were broken in various places. Another man with the same condition was buried the same way, and the third body was buried with their head between two big stones, and I just feel bad for this person. Most of these bodies were probably not vampires at all, but victims of cholera, and people believe the first person to die from an outbreak would return as a vampire. That's sound logic. And finally, at number 1 is the murder tomb. Back in 2009, a group of archaeologists were excavating the bottom of a prehistoric dry lake bed located in Motala, Sweden. They weren't expecting to find much since they were just doing it because the area was being paved for a new railway line, but they struck gold. I don't know if I can even call this striking gold, but sure. They ended up uncovering a stone tomb structure of some sort at the bottom of the lake, and after getting it open, discovered the skulls of 10 people. All of them were 8,000 years old, and it ranged from elderly skeletons to babies as well, so no one was spared in whatever was going on. But it gets even worse. After digging deeper, they found fragments of other skulls lodged into an 11th skull. I don't know how you would even shove skull fragments inside someone else's brain while they're still alive. This is some Hannibal Ting right here. Anyway, they also found a lot of bodies that had been torched alive and that had stakes driven through them. And that wasn't even from guessing. The group literally found 2 skulls with stakes melded into their skulls. No one can think of why the murder tomb was there. Perhaps some warriors mounted the skulls of their victims onto stakes, or maybe some innocent people were killing off a vampire infestation. I have no idea.
Starting off this countdown, we have the missing couple. Back on August 15th, 1942, husband and wife Marcelin and Francine Dumoulin of Switzerland went out to milk their cows and never returned home. Their 7 children wondered what happened to them for years, and they never gave up hope. 75 years later, their last remaining child got the answer. Their bodies were found frozen in the Alps after a glacier covering them melted. Researchers believe that the couple had fallen into a crevice which they stayed trapped in until they froze to death. The only photos released to the public were the items that they found next to the bodies, like their hiking boots and destroyed clothing. Actual photos of their frozen corpse has not been released due to respect of the family, but also for our own sake. It would be pretty gruesome to see a body frozen to death. In our 9th spot, we have the bones in a tree. In 2015, Clooney, Ireland was hit with a massive winter storm. As a result, a number of trees were uprooted, including a 250-year-old tree. What people didn't know is that this tree was hiding a very, very dark secret. Entangled in the roots of this tree was a mass of bones. After investigating, they found the bones belonged to a young fellow who died between the year 1030 and 1200. To make it worse, his ribs and hands had knife marks, suggesting that he was attacked, murdered, and then buried there. Here is a picture of the tree, but photos of the lad's bones in the tree roots has not been shared with the public. In our 8th spot today, we have the bog bodies. This discovery actually happened quite recently in terms of archaeology. It just happened over 15 years ago. A group of archaeologists were exploring an area in Scotland when they came across a number of bodies. But these were unlike any skeletal remains that they have ever seen before. No, these bodies were the combination of 6 different people fused together. Let me explain. The bodies were of 1 female and 1 male, who died about 3,000 years ago. But because of the state that they were in, it's believed that their bodies were thrown into a bog where they mummified for about 300 to 600 years, and then after that they were actually taken out and buried. So that right there is commitment. After analyzing the bodies, they realized that the woman's jaw was way too large for her skull, and the man's limbs were all off. Well, it turns out the female was combined with body parts from several others that died around the same time as her, whereas the male had body parts from people who died hundreds of years before him. And the bones weren't just pushed in together, they were actually attached properly. This has still baffled researchers. They literally found a bunch of Frankenstein bodies or something, and we don't know how they were created. Was this part of some weird ritual? Was this the works of a serial killer? Or did the bog somehow fuse them together? Honestly, we might never know. The medieval home for nuns. Back in 2015, British archaeologists made a pretty disturbing discovery that left them speechless. Over in Oxford, England, while excavating Littlemore Priory, which is a medieval home for nuns, they found 92 skeletons. These skeletons date back to between 600 and 900 years old. Lead archaeologist Paul Murray said, and I quote, "We knew the church was there and we knew we could find something, but the number of burials was a real surprise." Some of the remains they found belonged to a person with leprosy, who most likely was shunned because of their disease. They also found a skull from someone who died from blunt force trauma to their head, and a nun that was buried face down. Face down burials were meant for people who were either witches or accused of witchcraft or a sinner. In this case, they think that that nun was promiscuous and was getting on with priests, which is a sin, and so she was killed and buried with her face down. Photos from the site have not been released due to how unsettling they are. In our sixth spot, we have the Pit of Amputated Arms. In 2015, a team working in France got a terrifying glimpse into the past after stumbling upon this next discovery. They found 7 severed arms that had been brutally chopped off, probably when the victims were still alive, and then the arms were thrown into the bottom of a pit. The pit and arms date back to 6,000 years ago, and researchers believe that the arms belonged to farmers. To make matters worse, the arms were at the bottom of the pit, and on top of it were dozens of bodies just piled on. The bodies on top still had their arms attached, so they weren't the victims of the severed arms, but they had their skulls crushed in. It's still not clear what happened to these people. We don't know who killed them or why their arms were removed in the first place. All we know is that it's evidence of a horrible massacre. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with humans eating other humans. In 2019, archaeologists working at a site in southwest Germany came across 1,000 human remains. The remains were unearthed near a village from a 7,000-year-old human burial site. Now, archaeologists come across bones all the time. To them, it's no big deal, but these bones were. These people weren't just killed, they had their skulls scraped clean. The ribs had been peeled from the vertebrae, and some of the bones were snapped in half and their marrow had been sucked out. So this was evidence that humans attacked them, killed, and then ate them. Moving on at number 4, we have the witch bottle. Back in 2019, a number of artifacts known as the witch bottle were found in homes in England. One of them was found in a chimney of a pub during demolition. Now, witches' bottles are really quite strange. The one in the chimney contained fish hooks, human teeth, and urine. Other bottles have been composed of fingernails, human hair, bent pins, nails, shards of glass, and thorns. Typically, they are found in churchyards, riverbanks, or old buildings. They were made as a way to ward witches off. Apparently, the urine attracted the witches to the bottle, and then they would be trapped by the pins or the other sharp objects. I mean, it's kind of cool, but also it's definitely a strange find. Moving on to number 3, we have the whale vertebra. Archaeologists excavating a Scottish Iron Age site in 2016 came across something they never thought in a million years they would find. They found a hollowed out whale vertebra that was then filled with a human jawbone and the remains of 2 newborn lambs. Definitely an interesting collection of things. These items date back to about the mid-2nd century AD, and to this day, it still baffles scientists. Did the people back then hunt down this whale, or was it washed up on shore? The bigger question is why? Why did they take it, hollow it out, and then put things inside? And whose skull is that? Not only that, but the whale vertebra was held in place by a pair of red deer antlers and a large grinding stone. So this mystery just keeps getting weirder and weirder. In our second spot, we have the shackled skeletons. In 2016, a number of archaeologists were excavating a site in Athens, Greece, when they came across something straight out of a horror film. They found a group of 80 skeletons chained up with iron shackles around their wrists. To make matters worse, the skeletons had a terrified expression plastered on their faces. Their necks were flexed and their jaws hung open wide. Studies showed that all the skeletons were males who suffered horrific deaths. These skeletons belonged to prisoners from around 650 BC. Their death was very gruesome. They were all chained up, and then an executioner went down the line killing these men one by one, while the others watched, just waiting their turn. So no wonder why they look like they're screaming for their lives, because they probably were, and that is absolutely horrifying. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the hollowed out tree trunk. In 2019 in Switzerland, archaeologists stumbled upon an Iron Age Celtic woman placed inside of a hollowed out tree trunk. This acted as her coffin. She was placed there in a dress made out of sheep's wool, a sheepskin coat, and shawl. She was also buried alongside amber and glass necklaces, bronze bracelets, and other valuables, meaning she must have been a very important figure of her time. Archaeologists found the grave while renovating a school complex, and they were completely stunned, as anyone would be. Imagine being like, oh, what a nice tree trunk. Wait, there's a body in there. That's how I imagine their reaction was. Photos have not been released to the public, only animated, reenactment photos have.
Coming into number 10, we have Stonehenge. We haven't yet solved the mystery of Stonehenge, a prehistoric stone circle made out of 13 feet and 60,000 pound stones. Now this is situated on the Salisbury Plains in England. The stones date back to around 2400 BC, at which time all historical knowledge suggests that humans would not have had the manpower to construct such a site. The area has been a focus of archaeological interest for hundreds of years, and perhaps one day we will finally have an answer as to how and why the stones are there. This answer may well change what we know about our ancestors, or feed into a few wilder conspiracies that could change the way we think about the planet. Was it aliens? I don't know. Predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years, we have the Göbekli Tepe at number 9. The discovery of the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey changed history. Prior to the discovery of the 11,000-year-old structure, humans were thought to have been a lot more primitive. There was no way we thought that they could have been able to make a building like this. The ruins are so old that they even predate the pyramids, as well as simple things like villages and pottery, domestic animals, and agriculture. The area is being excavated by archaeologists led by German Klaus Schmidt. Excavations here could one day tell us more about our ancestors and what they were up to in Turkey. Coming into number 8, we have the Antikythera mechanism. The Antikythera mechanism was found in 1900 in the sunken wreckage of an ancient Greek ship. This was found off the coast in Crete. The device was largely ignored for 75 years and not even decoded until around 2006. The device changed the way we perceived our ancestors, as it seems that they were much more intelligent than we at first thought. Made thousands of years before its discovery, the device is considered to be one of the world's first computers. The device calculated celestial information, including phases of the moon and lunisolar calendars. The mechanism was so advanced that nothing even came close to it in terms of tech for at least another 1,500 years. Now the discovery really does go to show that the Middle Ages were really harmful to human progression, and that actually the ancient Greeks are one of the smartest civilizations. How can we apply what we know about that to our life today? Coming into number 7, we have Cleopatra's tomb. Cleopatra's tomb has been missing in action for over 2,000 years. We know from studying ancient Egypt that she was supposed to be the last pharaoh. She'd been much discussed in history as a beauty and a temptress. Historically, it is said that the last queen of Egypt killed herself, some say by encouraging a poisonous snake to bite her. Nobody knows what truly happened because nobody's ever been able to find her tomb. Until her tomb is found, or if indeed it ever is, history surrounding one of the most famous queens of all time will remain murky. If and when it's found, who knows what ancient secrets will be uncovered with it. Coming into number 6, we have the lost city of Atlantis. The elusive lost city of Atlantis was discussed by the otherwise credible Greek philosopher Plato. Atlantis was said to be a thriving city that had fallen upon misfortune and sunk. The location given by Plato can these days be traced to the Straits of Gibraltar, that's the sea separating Spain and Africa. The city has been much searched for, but as of yet, it hasn't been found. This has led many historians to write it off as a myth. However, if it were to be found, the site could totally rewrite history, and we could come across a missing civilization. It's pretty exciting. There could be a whole race of people that we never even knew about. Coming into number 5, we have the Kat Shebib. The Kat Shebib is a 93-mile-long ancient wall in Jordan, and archaeologists are totally puzzled by, who could have built it and why it's there. Nobody knows what purpose it serves. The wall was first spotted by a British diplomat, Sir Alec Kirkby, who was flying over the country. When archaeologists began studying the site, they found an area where 2 walls ran together side by side. Remains of 2 towers have also been found. This has allowed archaeologists to predict that it was built somewhere between 300 BC and 600 AD. Now that's almost a 1,000-year window, so really it hasn't narrowed it down too much. The wall is small in height, meaning it probably wasn't used for defense, but once again, the true purpose remains a total mystery. The Kat Shebib isn't the only strange structure in Jordan. Coming into number 4, we have giant circles. These giant stone circles are a huge mystery that have baffled scientists and archaeologists for a really long time. Found in lava fields, these stone structures vary between circular wheel-looking shapes, kites, and walls. They're at least 2,000 years old, and researchers have no idea who built them and why they're there. They're definitely too low to pen animals, so what are they doing there? What's puzzling archaeologists is the near-perfect shape of the circles, which would have been impossible to create back in those days. As of yet, we don't have an answer here, but when we do, it could be a game changer. Coming into number 3, we have the Nazca lines. The Nazca lines are a giant design motif etched into the ground south of Lima in Peru. As of the filming of this video, new lines are still being discovered and people are totally baffled by them. The geoglyphs date back from around 500 BCE to 200 CE, and archaeologists are still baffled as to how and why they're there. Obviously they're working on an answer, but as with all things we can't explain yet, some conspiracists are pointing to aliens. Coming into number 2, we have the Barringer meteorite crater. Now this excites me the most on the list, I think. The Barringer meteorite crater in Winslow, Arizona formed 50,000 years ago. Scientists are studying the crater with keen interest as they probe the dent to find out more about our own planetary history, as well as looking for clues for our wider universe. Obviously a meteorite is a foreign body of rock from out of space. Then crashing down into Earth, there's a lot to be discovered about space matter. Also, refining the age of the impact will help geologists understand what else was going on Earth at the time. Finally, coming into number 1, we have ancient soil underneath the Greenland ice sheet. Okay, forget concrete, wood, and stone buildings, the building blocks of nature are concealing some major secrets that could rewrite our history. Could also totally rewrite what we know about the Earth. We aren't just talking learning what the world was like a few thousand or even hundreds of thousands of years ago. The soil under Greenland's ice sheet dates back 2.7 million years, so beyond the dawn of mankind. This discovery has led to our re-evaluation of the ice sheet. We now know that it has never fully melted, but it is at risk of melting now due to human activity. Beyond that, studying soil from so long ago can seriously aid scientists in understanding the formation of our planet. If we're able to understand that, then there really is a potential to rewrite history as we know it.